Table format. How are you going to put your descriptive statistics together? Okay, so one thing that I showed you in the last lecture is that you don't want to have too many decimal places. So how many are the right number? So here's a guide. For proportions, you want 3. So here's an example, the primary net enrollment rate. That's for schooling, 0.671. Okay, that means that 0.67, well, it's like 67.1% or 0.671 is a proportion, so 3 is fine there. For percents, you just need 1. Health spending as a percent of GDP, 4.1. Large dollar amounts, really anything bigger than 100. Like GDP per capita, you don't want any cents. The cents are really not adding any great information. Hourly wage rates, well, then we do care about the cents. So, for example, the minimum wage is expressed as $8.50. That's important. Regression coefficients, we'll be doing that later. There's 3. I don't have much of an example for you, but that was the cleanup that we did on the TÜV Day on that table about marriage and the one-child policy in China. So that's 3 decimals. So notice you never have more than 3. There's really no need for it. Age, you usually have 1 decimal. So age at first marriage is an example, 22.7 years. And years of schooling, just 1 decimal place. It's very important that the decimals be uniform down a column for the same measure. So here's just 2 tables. Here's adolescent fertility rates by country income in 2011, average number of births per 1,000 women ages 15 to 19. And this has different country income categories. And there's all these numbers here that are, some don't have any because maybe this is 0.0 or who knows. But here you can see that it's cleaned up. And it's a much easier table to read. So you definitely want to make sure that once you get your data together, when you're ready to present it, you want to present it this way. Okay, some other stuff about table format. Tables should be able to stand alone. That means that someone should be able to really understand your tables just from the information that you've provided. Don't use abbreviations. You should write it out so that someone doesn't have to be like, I don't know what you're talking about. And then anything that's not explained in the description of the variable, you should provide an explanation. So that should be complete. You don't want to make your reader read the text, go back to the table, go back to the text. The table should stand alone. And every table needs a source. So for most of you, the source is going to be World Development Indicators, authors, calculations. So there's different ways that different professors are going to want you to cite online databases like the World Development Indicators. But for Econ 307, we're going to follow the Econ Style Guide. So this is quoted from there. If you are using figures from an online database, provide the source, web address, and date access, but do not include it in your references since the references sections is for documents. Okay, so that's just one, that's my view of it. Someone else could differ. And here's an example. Our study replicates CATS 1979 in a very different gender environment. 36 years since CATS's original study, women now comprise 35% of tenured and tenure-track nationally and 27% of faculty in U.S. doctoral institutions. Footnote, and then the data source with how to get to it. So that's how you'll be doing yours. Okay, so descriptive statistics. How do I want you to write the table? Well, let's go back to Excel and see what you're going to have. You have something like this. So I've already run my data analysis and I've got my summary statistics. Whoa, what is all of this? Remember I said what I'm interested in is mean, standard deviation, and the number. That's the count here. So I'm going to take this to another tab and make it a little prettier. Okay, so let me make that nice and big so that we can see it. Okay, so let's get rid of the standard error, all this other stuff that you'll learn about in statistics, but we're not going to present. It's not standard to present in a table of summary statistics. So I'm going to delete those. We want the standard deviation. We don't want any of this. Notice we don't want the maximum and minimum either. That that is not provided. Okay, so let's delete. Okay, so this is actually, I guess I can shift rows up. Let's do the entire row. Okay. You don't want to dump this into a table because it's really hard to read. So even, Excel will do this for you, but then you have to make it pretty. Okay, so what does a table look like? Well, typically what we have is we have the variables of interest going down the column here. Oh, and I don't want to move them too quickly because I don't want to lose track. But these are the mean and standard deviation that go along with life expectancy. So I'm going to put that here. Here's GDP per capita. Okay, I'll put that here with their... Okay, and then health expenditure as a percent of GDP. Okay, and then we've got the count. So let me make this longer here. So the count is going to be, let's make sure our reader knows exactly what it is. It's the number of countries, so it'll be very descriptive. And that's 174. I'm not going to repeat it for each variable. All right, so let me get rid of this. Bye. Okay, so these are all wacky in terms of lots of decimals with TMI, too much information. Okay, so life expectancy, that's in years, that should be 1 decimal. And there's this handy thing right up here that will allow me to reduce the number of decimals. Let's just make sure it rounded correctly. That should go to 4, shouldn't it? That's not quite right. I'll have to look into that. Okay, this one is big dollar amounts. We don't need the cents. Let's get rid of those. It's nice to have the 1,000 though. Oops, it wants those. Okay, that one rounded correctly. What's wrong with you? Okay, and these two also. Let's reduce those. 4.1, and it should be 2.3, and it is. Okay. All right, so that's the basic information. It's not very pretty. I'm going to get rid of these borders. This thing will allow me to do that, so no borders. Okay. So what I did was I copied and pasted this into Word, and I recommend that you make the tables in Word because it's a little more flexible. And I'm not a Word, I don't like Word that much, but it's actually, Excel is really nice to get all the data ready and then you can move it into Word. And so I'll show you what my table looked like when I was done with it. Okay, so this is the same information. It's got a lot of lines. Oh, those probably aren't that necessary, right, from a Tuesday point of view. I should get rid of those. Before I turn it in, I will. And what's this doing bold? Okay, so this is just actually really a heads up to you also. So, I mean, I spent a fair amount of time on this and I've still got some funkiness going on. When you're writing your final paper, you really want to take care of that. You don't want, it's distracting to me that the standard deviations are bold. But aside from that, oh, actually, I have it nicer this way. Okay, so notice that I have a title that doesn't say descriptive statistics. Your title could be descriptive statistics. These are descriptive statistics, but it conveys more information if you tell your reader what you're actually showing them. So I'm showing mean values for health and income measures and the standard deviations in parentheses. So this part is standard, that you would put the standard deviations in parentheses like that. Life expectancy at birth in years. Okay, I think I cleaned up the language a little bit from the way that the World Development Indicators report it so that it's really clear. And here's something else to look at. No decimals. Oh, I showed you that already. Okay, here's the source. So it's not a footnote because it's right in the table, but it's World Development Indicators, the link, and then when it was accessed. And this is the funnest part, author's calculations, because you did this. If someone went to this website, they're not going to find this table. you put that together. And so here's a note that the data are from 2009. So that's where you're going this week, or when you get to the start to analyze your data, you're going to create, one of the things you're going to do is create a table of descriptive statistics. Now, what's this here, this all? That's not really conveying any information. It's just that later on in your project, you're going to do something else, and so you'll need that column. So we're saving you a little bit of time. Next up, X and Y variables conventions. And that one is not narrated. That's just a PowerPoint. It's just some information I want you to have. You'll need it for the quiz, and you'll need it to, it makes it easier to talk to other economists about what you're doing. And that is the end of this.